So this is going to be a demonstration of our JDE digital workforce platform. So let's sign in here. What we're presented with is SSO form. So this is an Entra application. It's a full SaaS product, but this is you define an Entra application and you define the users that are allowed to log into the platform. And when you've done that, we secure the portal with your Entra application, and therefore only authorised users are able to log in. Now I'm signed in as my JD user, and I can verify that by seeing here that we've got a complete run through getting a PS token, generating that, and then generating an AIS token. So we've got a completely secure journey through to JD, and therefore all of the row security, all of the application security, columnar security, absolutely everything is respected on the complete journey from the LLM back to JD and back again. And so I think that gives you peace of mind when the JD security model is enforced throughout the platform's journeys. Initially, we'll just do some simple demonstrations by going into the address book and executing a few simple queries. So we can quickly ask how many customer records are there in the address book? And that quickly forms the perfect AIS query. It goes through to JD. It's already got an authorization token as me, and if row security permits me to see 319 records, then that's what's returned. Can you tell me how many address book records have the word Shannon in them? And once again, we're getting it to return us a count of records with the word Shannon in them. That's great. Can you show me all of those records on the screen, please? I probably shouldn't be using my manners, that costs additional token usage. But let's see those records return. And it does seem that there's a lot of duplicates, isn't there? So it's giving us that. Why don't we use our knowledge base, because we've trained, this is beyond the LLM, so this is using vectorization and RAG to answer queries before it goes to the LLM. Are there any techniques in which I can know how many duplicates are in the address book? So now I'm using the knowledge base to determine this, and so it's trained on all of the JD manuals, and we can see that there's a check for duplicates report that we can run, and there's the standard report and version. Can you tell me the data selection and processing options for the check duplicate address report? So we'll be able to look at the processing options and determine how that's been set up, and we could change them before we wanted to run them. But let's see how this goes. Okay, so great. So it's saying the number of characters to match on alpha name, duplicate postcodes, contact information. Excellent. Well, I think I might just run this. Can you please run that report, then retrieve the PDF and give me an executive summary of what you find in the PDF report? And so this is a classic example of where you can build out some amazing insights from the platform. Because the platform can run a report and retrieve the results, it can retrieve the results from the previous run or the previous month or the previous year, and AI can do the comparison of those reports and draw conclusions in what's happening over time. So imagine your scheduled reports. When you're running your integrity reports, quite often you don't understand whether there's a change from the previous month to the previous week. Whereas in AI, what we can put together here is a run book, and we can schedule a run book, and that allows you to then compare the previous integrity month to the current integrity month and actually report on differences, as opposed to looking at an integrity report by itself and not really getting a lot of insights out of it. So we can see here that there's a huge amount of duplicates in many different areas of the system. It says, and it actually gives recommendations. So it starts to give us recommendations of what we might be able to do. So we can further run the R0101M to merge those records that don't have transaction history. So it's got this deep knowledge of JD Edwards, and it's walking us through the process in which we can fix this data. We could pull that report if we wanted. So now what we might want to do is see what orchestrations are available to us using address book functionality. I can type orchestrations available for address functionality. So it's able to query the orchestrations that are available to my user today. So it respects the JDE security model, and it's doing a live query of orchestrations that are available to me. And we can see here that there's a few orchestrations available related to address book functionality, and these seem to give us quite a lot of capabilities. So we've got a delete address book, and that can pass in the alpha name to delete, and you can imagine with running that address book integrity report, we could actually say, oh well, for these two entries, can you please call the address book entry orchestration, address book delete orchestration, and it would delete those orcs. But why don't we see if we can run a particular orchestration here. So let's grab a sample data file, and we'll go to here, we'll go to BP, and we'll grab this file here. And we'll say for each row in the attached spreadsheet, can you call this orchestration? And so now it knows that it has to call that orc and create 10 new address book entries, because the spreadsheet that I've uploaded there has some address book entries. But next we'll go to sales orders, which are a little bit more complex, and they have some parent-child relationships. So we can see here, it's as easy as that. That orchestration could have 20, 30, 40 parameters of complex address book information, and we're able to enter that data into JD Edwards without any mistakes, without any hallucination. So we've got all of our AN8s assigned there, and our new address book entries. Now what I'm going to do is turn off knowledge base, because it doesn't really need to use knowledge base for the queries that we're processing at the moment, but I might tidy up just in case I want to run this demonstration again. So let me grab the name of the delete address book and say, hey, I just made a bit of a mistake, can you please tidy up those records and call this orchestration for each of the ones that you just created? And so hopefully that's going to delete all those records for me. Oh, it's asking me for confirmation, which is fantastic. Yes. So that's great that we've got some belt and braces in terms of querying whether the deletion of records is appropriate. Fantastic, all those records were successfully deleted. And then we see that all those changes have occurred but not verified. So we get this confirmation tag at the end of each of our conversations, which helps a lot. So these are the basic module experts. So we've just been talking to the address book expert. Now we might go to the sales order expert, again being trained on the classical sales order functionality available to you, but also you can upload any of your standard operating procedures, so your SOPs, you can upload any of your help manuals, you can just convert your help manuals to PDFs and load them into our system, and our system will consider that in its responses to end users. So basically you've got a full, complete JD Edwards interactive chatbot available to you that understands all of your custom processes, all of your custom uses of category codes, and how your system is set up, because it's been trained on your materials. It's in the repository augmented generated database, which we vectorize and serve up to the end users. So let's look at some of the orchestrations available for sales order entry. How many sales orders have been entered in the last 20 days? So it's able to tell us, since the 19th of May, we've got 229 sales orders. can you tell me the most popular product and how many have been sold? So again, instead of looking for BI reports, instead of trying to slice and dice and export to Excel to work this data out, it's able to determine what are the most common items. It's even going out to the item master to give us the correct unit of measures, and we see that the fuel has been the most, and it's nearly 1 million gallons of fuel. So that's pretty interesting. And then it gives us the ability to drill back into JD Edwards to see any of the, so it generates shortcuts for us to go back to the source of truth if we wanted any further information there. So let's grab back to downloads, let's grab this, and so I think let's look for orchestrations available to us, and there's quite a few sales orchestrations, but I think one of the ones that we want to look for here, let's just open query. Can you tell me what orchestrations are available to add sales orders? I think the F5 orc create SO, that looks fairly appropriate for me, and so I think I've still got my attachment attached, but let's see how we go. Based upon the attached CSV, can you please add all of the sales orders using this orchestration? This orchestration. Okay, so now it's determining the parameters for the orchestration that I've specified there, and it'll map the fields or the columns in the spreadsheet based upon the parent-child relationships of the sales orders, and then it's going to go ahead and complete the entry of all of these sales orders. And you know that's a complex process. You know that creates complex forms. You know that that's calling complex master business functions for advanced pricing. There is a lot going on at the back end. But as a user, I've got a predefined format of an Excel spreadsheet, and I can talk to this process, and I can automate these processes in JD Edwards. So what you're seeing here is a human in the lead, not just a human in the loop. And we really recommend, when dealing with financial transactions and the current levels of maturity with AI and agency, so when we talk about agency, that's autonomous transactions, we believe a human in the loop will give you the best results, because you get the confirmation of the data into JD Edwards, and you can fix any nuances with particular fields and particular data. If any of you have experience with integrations involving sales orders, you'll know that a small, an incorrect field or like a hyphen or some strange character in any of the fields will break the entire integration. But when a human's in the loop, they can spot that really easily and fix it. So what we've seen here is the confirmation of those 10 orders that have just been created into JD Edwards. It's even giving us additional information, like there's low stock for particular items, so that's fantastic for us to know, because then we might dig deeper into our conversation about doing some reorders and making sure all the manufacturing work orders are okay to create the particular stock in question. And then we've got also that this is an inactive customer, so one of the line items in the spreadsheet is not correct, and so we could go in and start to investigate that actual customer name. So we get this really good feedback from the system. So again, these are the generic module experts, which have extreme capabilities for experienced users. But then we need to take our less experienced users on a journey through JD Edwards. And what we've put together here enables you to customize a complete assistant to make your end users superhuman. So what we see here is you're able to create your own assistant. So your assistant actually can be shared as a group or as an individual assistant, and this makes it really easy for you to have an environment for your end users to just have an exact assistant. And I'll show you this. You've given the assistant a name, and in this case it's Vineyard Operations. You've given it a description, and then it's got an actual site. So that's a folder. So you can share the entire folder, or you can share the assistant. So you might have distribution, and then you might have receiving assistant, and put away assistant, and ship confirm consistent, etc. So you may logically group all of your assistants, and all of this can happen on the glass. you can specify the RAG documents that this assistant should use when talking with the end user. And so this is a really amazing way that you can fine-tune the responses and make sure that the assistant's not going to go off-piste because it's using your actual operating procedures to instruct the end user on what they need to do. We've also got the concept of skills, which we're just touching on now, but this is the standard building blocks of AI, and Anthropic came up with the concept of skills, and now Copilot's following them as well. But these are building blocks, hierarchical building blocks, where you can give AI specific instructions about the operations that it should perform as this assistant, or for this particular organization, or for this particular inventory movement. So you can give it specific instructions, and you can copy those specific instructions for any of the assistants that you choose to use. So you can, on this screen here, you can enable whichever skills that you want this particular assistant to expose, and now you've got your buttons. And so this is where you're creating the prompts, and the more detail in the prompt, the less the more accuracy you get, and the less chance of hallucination. And so the combination of an accurate prompt, add to that skills specific for the job, and you're going to go a very long way to making sure that your assistants do exactly what they want. So let's go back to basic. Let's say share this particular system. Let's copy this URL and we'll show you what works here. So now we can just grab, and so just say you had vineyard operations staff. They had a basic terminal. They could be on their phone, and this entire journey works perfectly on someone's phone, where they can talk to text, they can ask questions. Imagine having a expenses app on your phone. You could talk to the expenses. You could say, upload this particular photo and enter this into JD Edwards. And if you had an orchestration, or if you defined app stack, or if you had an assistant with the right skills, this would work end to end on your phone. You don't have to have expensive new devices. You don't have to log into a PC to get transactions into JD Edwards anymore. So as you saw, we defined the description, we defined what these prompts, these buttons were going to execute. We defined RAG documents that this assistant was going to consider when talking to JD Edwards, and we also have specific skills which it's going to use. And you can see all of this being put together now so that our assistant can answer some pretty complex queries going on here. And what it does for the end user, you're taking them on an AI literacy journey. So the prompts down the left-hand side for people who aren't really sure how they start the conversations off or what they're going to do with JD Edwards. And then you've got the right-hand side here, the conversational block, where they can drill deep, where they can ask detailed questions, where they can understand more about the data and drill down to these particular blocks, particular harvests, and do analysis on why they're getting some certain results back. So you can see here that you've got a complete customized way of bringing people along for this AI literacy journey. And then as administrators, you can define more buttons and you can define more capability of the assistants that you're deploying out to the field. And you can secure these assistants just as you secure absolutely any URL through an app gateway or through your cloud-hosted system. What I haven't talked about either is that our digital assistant works for on-premise environments, and it works for cloud-based environments. So any environment where we're able to hook up JD Edwards through 2 ports. We use the Server Manager port, and we use the AIS server port, and then all of this functionality is exposed. We'll go back home. We'll have a quick look at our Server Manager capabilities. So hopefully the Server Manager is up, but let's look for our CNC menu here. And let's say the system's a little bit slow. The system feels a little bit slow at the moment. Can you tell me how many users are logged in, how long the web servers have been up, and if there's any indication of slowness from the configuration that you have access to? So it's quite a common question for end users to want to understand what's going on in JD Edwards, and you may not necessarily want to ring your CNC people or ring your support provider to try and find out what is going on. So what we're able to do is open that up to a conversation, and we can ask a quick question of the system to say, hey, well, tell me all the details you have. And of course, Server Manager's been exposed. All the endpoints of Server Manager have been exposed as tools. And we can see here that it's already enumerating the servers, it's enumerating the web servers, it's understanding the call object times. And so now we get a pretty good idea of, okay, so we're connected to the AIS web server and the AIS server itself. It's only been up for 16 minutes, that must have been rebooted last night. We can see that there's 17 kernels up. And then we've got the login is taking nearly 1 second at 0.78 of a second. So, potentially that's something that we want to look into, although it seems to have speeded up across all 9 invocations. So it's a really good summary of exactly what's going on. And of course, if you have the right permissions, you can stop and start any of these servers through a conversation as long as you have the right permissions. So there's so much good information that we're able to get there, but it just makes it so much easier to get to. You don't have to have server manager, you don't have to have all these complicated UIs to get to the information that you need. We'll just do a little bit of a navigation here to understand all the various options. So we do have all of our pre-trained module experts, and they've been trained on the classic JD Edwards documentation. We have the ability, if you're an ERP Insights customer, and that's where we have plugged in Google Analytics into JD Edwards, we're able to look at the actual ERP usage. We look at what every single user is doing, every single button click, every single application that's being run in JD Edwards, and we can make agentic recommendations based upon your actual ERP usage. So therefore, we're recommending automation where it matters the most for your organization. So that's something here I'm not going to show you because you may not be ERP Insights customers, but if you are, there's a whole lot more value that'll come out of this particular component of data. We have our agent builder, and that's for autonomous agents, and we might go through looking at that. When you use autonomy, you have to be more deterministic. And so to be deterministic on our platform, we have this concept of a sub-step library. And when we convert probabilistic code to deterministic code, we use sub-steps and we use actual code to execute steps, because I've been doing this for too long to understand that AI is not a calculator. AI is not good at certain operations. It's excellent at some, it's not good at all, and we have to get better at understanding its strengths and weaknesses. And a part of building this platform was understanding that and giving you the ability to generate deterministic agents at pace. We can have schedules, we have scheduling jobs, we have scheduling capability, and we can also group steps together, and they're called run books. So we can create a run book which might be run this report, run the next report, run an integrity report, and then that is the run book, and then we can schedule that every day and then compare the previous jobs, etc., etc. So schedules give us a lot of power on the platform as well. We have our knowledge base, which you can upload any of your custom documentation or standard documentation to, and then our skills library. And this is really important. This is the building blocks of AI. This is how you can have a semantic layer. You can create a semantic layer and ontologies on top of that, so that your AI does not hallucinate like other AI. So all of this is in the platform, available to you, ready to use. Finally, we've got, we can just determine the RAG health. There's a bunch of various settings available to you. You can change colors, you can set your AIS servers, you can change your secure keys for your AI, and then you can have administrative users on the platform as well. So everything's available here under the settings page. That navigates a little bit too far. You can import and export any of the configurations, so any of the skills that you create, and if you're a consulting company, you could create a bunch of skills and then you can import and export them. You can also import and export agent definitions, and you can import and export assistance. So all of the soft coding in the platform can be imported and exported. Now our system is multi-language, so you could choose that you wanted Italian to Italian, Italian to French. You could you could use this as your translation platform, but you have the ability to change any of the languages for you. Save that off. You can choose a default model. Remember that Haiku is probably the cheaper model, and Opus is the deep thinking model. And I might ask it to do deep thinking operations, and so I can set that to Opus by default. I've got this responding in concise mode because I don't need all of the conversational components to follow with recommendations, etc. But that's sometimes a good thing to do, and I've also got follow-up suggestions. So that's my setup there. And then finally, we've got our activity log. So we've got a complete logging and auditing function on this platform to enable us to do reinforcement learning. So we actually allow users to thumbs up or thumbs down any of the responses, and they can give reasons for doing that. And that feeds our internal engines to be able to learn from when we're doing a good job or a bad job. And what we actually do is we can create skills on your platform based upon consistencies in the audit log. So if the agents are doing the wrong thing consistently, we can create skills which will retrain the agents, and that'll cater for that drift and allow them to continue to provide good service to the end users. And then finally we've got some feedback capability, and that's where you can add any bugs or logs. We can see there's a couple of feedback items here, but they get read on the fly. AI reads those and triages them, and that determines if they're going to go into the main line. We saw all of the assistants that we've created. Agents are our autonomous agents, so these are the guys that do autonomous processing, and there's quite a few of those there. And then we've got the ability to view any of our historical reports. So if we were to go into, let's just say we want to, let's go into our custom agent. This is the final demonstration that I'm going to do for now. We have the ability to generate an agent from a design document or description. So you can just cut and paste a meeting transcript into our platform here. You can put a design document in if you've thought about a process that you want to automate in JD Edwards, and this will create an agent from a design document. So I'm just going to grab a sample design document that I prepared earlier, BBMD, and so this is a receipting specification. And so let's see how we go. We're going to analyze that document, and our platform is going to convert this document into probabilistic agentic instructions. We can look at those instructions, we can determine if they're appropriate, and then it's going to recommend which of those probabilistic steps should be converted into deterministic code. And remember, we saw the substep library earlier, so we can actually then map our probabilistic code to deterministic substeps and make this agent reliable, make it auditable, and make it repeatable. And that's such an important thing to remember when you are not in the loop or not in the lead, when you're running this as an autonomous process. Now remember that you don't need to generate, you generate an agent once and then you might use it a million times. So the fact that this is taking a little bit of time to determine our delivery specification into code, that's okay with me. So we can see that that's finished already, and it's gone, okay, so it's detected that it's going to need access to the 4311, 43121, so it's worked out all the tables that it needs to access. It's found an orchestration that it's going to need to call to create a receipt, and no direct business function. So let's continue to the refinement. And now we can see here that the platform has asked us a bunch of detailed questions about how it could make this specification a little bit better. And this is all related to the process, and this is related to setup items, processing options, use of fields, etc. But it wants to know more details to make sure that this agent's doing the right thing for this customer. And so I'm not going to change any of those. Let's import that into the wizard. That's great. And we can now step through what it's created. And so if we look at next, we can see it's the goods receiving automation agent. We can actually put a dollar figure here. So if this runs successfully without human hands, that's worth $25 to me, and that's human savings. That's fantastic. And then we got excellent reports here that allow us to see exactly what's going on in terms of how many times it's been run, how many tokens it's consumed, and therefore whether we're in front or behind on that particular agent. We can see here that we've got a compliance level or a temperature, so we want our agents to be super strict. It's going to use the app stack, it's going to use file attachments, and it's going to use orchestrations because we talked about a particular orchestration. There's our tables. There's our orchestration. We can also give it some knowledge base articles if we wish. Let's go next. And now here's all the logical rules. So it has pulled apart a Word document, which is just basically a design specification, and it's sequenced and created us a bunch of logical rules that we can apply to this process. And so we can see the agent validates the purchase order number is present on the delivery document. So it's going through, it's using AI to do OCR across the documentation, and then it's going to go into the AIS server and it's going to query the doco to make sure that this particular purchase order exists in the system. Then it looks at quantities, etc. So it's doing all this heavy lifting. So what we've done is we've generated a 22, 25, we've just generated a 33-step agentic process by reverse engineering a design document. Alright, so that's pretty fantastic. And so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get one that I've cooked up earlier, and we'll see if we can run it as a demo. So let's go to this particular one. To test our agents, we've got our test agent capability here, and what we can do is grab that, and this hopefully will render a new window here, and it's got all of our steps down the left hand side once it initializes. And then I'm going to grab a sample document here to test this. So this is the receiving, and this is a delivery document that I'm loading up into the system, and I'm going to say process this. And let's see what our agentic steps are going to go through. So we'll see our agent working through all of the steps that we created before, all of the 21 steps, to process this delivery into JD Edwards. So you can see here it's doing the OCR, so AI is doing the OCR across the document, and now it's validating that the purchase order number exists because they're mandatory fields. And what it's done there is it's looked in JD Edwards and it's seen that, hey, that actual purchase order doesn't exist, so it's done the query against AIS. It's actually been fully receipted, so we're not going to allow you to receipt that entry. And so then this would go off to an exception queue, and users would be able to manually determine what's been going on. But in terms of the strict rules that we've given our agent, it's been able to follow them. And we can also see here that that cost us 16 cents, or sorry, that cost us 4 cents to execute. We saved a little bit of money on caching there too, and so in net ROI for that process, which unfortunately wasn't successful in this instance, but the data's not in JD Edwards, that's exactly what we want to happen. So hopefully you've seen a fairly comprehensive agentic platform. This really does modernize JD Edwards. What we think is that we talk about JD Edwards being headless, or a lot of big modern applications being headless, and the reason they can be headless or without a UI, without the user interface, is that we can effectively use AI to be that intermediate interface and to help us perform these joyless, busy tasks. And so what we've put together here, a platform to enable you to do that, and you can export any of the definitions of these capabilities. We do run Anthropic at the back end, so we're using Claude models to power this solution, and they can be hosted on Azure Foundry, they can be hosted on Bedrock, or they can be native Anthropic deployments, and of course that can run in your region of choice. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the demo.